Unlocking the Power of NetSuite and ApprovalMax. I'm joined by a couple of the guys here from ApprovalMax, and also Derek has joined us from Yoco. If you'd like to just jump to the next slide, then Derek, and we'll do some introductions and go through the agenda. So the hope for today, really, is that obviously from the chatting with Derek and moving through the different different topics, that we will able to find out kind of a bit more about how he and Yoco as a team have been able to automate the approvals workflows, optimize their use of NetSuite, and ultimately drive the productivity and cost savings for them as a team. My hope, and the hope of the team here and Derek as well, is that this will provide you with a unique chance to learn directly from an experienced NetSuite and ApprovalMax user. And over the course of this webinar, Derek will share some insights with you that you can apply, and also will all be available to answer any questions you may have from this content that we're discussing. Okay, so myself, my name's Ian. I'm one of the account execs here at ApprovalMax, working with customers on the NetSuite side of things. I've been with the business for the best part of half a year. My background is very much in a tech space, so I've worked with people on NetSuite for a long period of time over the length of my career as well. And as I said, I'm joined kindly by Derek here from Yoco. And Derek, if you'd like to give a bit of an introduction to yourself and Yoco.
Sure, thanks, Ian. So I've been with Yoco for about 2 years. Before that, I had a background in terms of consulting, mainly across telecommunications and banking, and implementing large business systems. Within Yoco, I'm responsible for the team that looks after the technology that empowers the whole business. We have another technology team that looks after a lot of our custom-built app and website and payment technologies. But I'm looking after the tech that supports and runs the business. And I suppose ApprovalMax fits neatly into that definition. So that's a bit about me.
Fantastic. And I think for the people that have joined the call, it's probably good to get a little bit of insight in terms of where you are, Derek, as well, in terms of Yoco. And I think the next slide kindly kind of highlights a bit of that for the guys and
Sure.
girls.
So what is Yoco? Yoco is known as a card payments fintech company, and we help companies from all sizes take card payments, from micro enterprises, so it could be your side hustle, through to larger businesses that are operating multiple branches. We cover that full range of businesses. And Yoco is known for taking payments easy, right? And a company will come to us, start taking payments, and then they'll start to discover that we offer them a lot more services that actually help to empower and drive their business. So, for example, we offer online card payments. So if you got an online store, we can also quickly integrate to that, especially if you're an existing customer. We provide business finance to customers. We offer like a point of sale functionality in our app. So we have a bunch of customers out there that just use the Yoco app for their point of sale. And at the end of the day, we have the Yoco portal, which allows you to report on all your transactions. It gives you your daily transaction summaries. It lets you know which of your staff are getting tips if you're in a service industry, and how those tips are tracking over time. So we're really about doing business really simple for people, so people can be freed up to focus on what matters, and that's their customers. So Yoko's been around about 10 years. During that time, we've transitioned from a very small startup of a handful of people to about 300 plus people. And our life journey at this point is all about learning to operate at scale. There's some things we still do in the business that we used to do when we were 50 or 100 people, and those things no longer work. So it's about learning how do we operate at a bigger scale, and we need the right level of process. We need enough process to be able to guide us and give us direction, but we don't want so much process that it's stifling. So that's a little bit in terms of where we're at in terms of our life journey as well.
Excellent news, and thank you for that, Derek. And I think for those of the people that have kind of joined this webinar that maybe haven't encountered ApprovalMax, or maybe haven't really seen what ApprovalMax and the integration with NetSuite does, I want to just spend a couple of minutes just talking through kind of who we are and where the NetSuite solution sits. So ApprovalMax for NetSuite ultimately allows organizations to create automated multi-step approval workflows for bills from NetSuite and POs raising ApprovalMax, all without needing to grant approvers access to NetSuite. So detailed workflows based on criteria such as amount, vendor, or requester allows teams to easily set up unique approval workflows to suit complex or simple business processes. When all decision makers have approved the documents via the desktop or the mobile app, NetSuite automatically updates their status to approved, and finance teams can access auto-generated audit logs that track every step in detail. And as we'll allude to within this deck as well, it comes with nice little add-ons as well, such as the Slack integration, which I know has helped the team at Yoco, and that's something we can dive into a bit further as well. So let's give a bit of background in terms of where ApprovalMax for NetSuite falls and how it can help. And I suppose with that being said, we can get on and start talking about ApprovalMax and Yoco, Derek. So just to give us all a bit of insight in terms of the audience here, one of the things that we want to do is just to put out a bit of a poll to everyone who's attending, just to get a bit of insight in terms of where your challenges are sat. So by all means, if you want to get involved, we'll leave the poll open for sort of a couple of minutes, maybe a minute or so, try and gather some responses. And then when we have got those responses, we can kind of move forward and hopefully talk to some of those challenges that you're facing as well. Excellent. So I can see that we've actually got quite an even split across people are seeing challenges with data errors, people are seeing challenges with too many users with access to NetSuite, and also poor document trails or additional audit work that's required. And I think that's definitely all three of those points as kind of core challenges are things that the solution can address. And interestingly, we can talk to a couple of these points specifically in this deck. But if there's any questions relating to your particular challenges that we don't address, by all means, we'd love to hear from you in the chat, and we can address those as well. All right. Fantastic. So, Derek, tell me, and I know we spoke about this, and I found the response really interesting in terms of the journey you went through and how you ended up setting up the integration with NetSuite. So tell me about how the integration between NetSuite and ApprovalMax, from your perspective, works, and how that differed from your experience of trying to set things up in other kind of solutions.
Sure. Thanks, Ian. So when you ask about how do you set up the integration between NetSuite and ApprovalMax, my first thought is that this is a bit of an anticlimax, right? If you've tuned in wanting a lot of technical information about parsing JSON objects and parameters, you're not going to get that. Simply, you create an integration record in NetSuite, you add a role to it, you create a token, then you copy and paste that token into ApprovalMax, and then it just works, right? So that's as complex as it gets. If you've been doing a bit of admin in NetSuite for a month or two, as I had at the time when we were doing this, you'll be able to do it. And you'll probably get up and running in about 30 minutes. Now, I wish someone had told me that before we implemented, because our challenge was we were busy implementing NetSuite. We thought, oh, we want to integrate with ApprovalMax in future, but that's going to be long and difficult. So let's just build some custom workflows in NetSuite in the meantime before we get our heads around ApprovalMax. And so we spent time on that. We spent and time testing them, making sure they worked, deploying them. Then we spent time removing them from NetSuite once we figured out that ApprovalMax was actually simple and quick and easy to get in. And then we used ApprovalMax. So yeah, my advice to people would be don't put it off. You can play around with ApprovalMax on the free trial even just to see how easy it is. But don't make the mistake that we did, which was thinking, oh, we'll do this as a phase 2 because it's complex, because it's actually simpler than doing it natively in NetSuite.
Yeah, I genuinely love that response, because having spoken to so many people and having worked with NetSuite people that use NetSuite in the past, often the assumption is that integrations are going to be heavy lifting and challenging. And I think that like you've kind of alluded to there, this is very much not the case when it comes to working and bringing ApprovalMax into that suite and that scope. But yeah, thank you for that. And I think that allows us, we can now obviously move on, and we can look at the meat and bones of what we are, or what you guys are doing with the integration. So tell us a bit about the landscape before implementing Approval Max. What were the challenges you were facing? And kind of let's discuss that if that's okay.
Sure. So as I explained, we had chosen to go and build workflows in NetSuite. Like to say the NetSuite user interface is not user friendly, I think is being very polite. It's a very powerful tool, but it's got a lot of complexity in the user interface. And you typically have to use external skills. As a smaller company, it's not like we have a dedicated NetSuite team that's on site all the time to deal with our every need. So we are dependent on NetSuite partners and implementers to help us build out these flows. So the first challenge is that depends on external skills, which don't come cheap. The second challenge is in testing those flows, because you are someone to build a workflow. There are perhaps edge cases that you haven't understood at the beginning. You put it into production, and then you realize, oh, there's some vendor that um, has a bill that is deviates from what you expected, and then you have to go back and change those NetSuite workflows. So it's not even like once you built them initially at cost, at a cost that they're stable forever. They need to change fairly often. So those are some of the challenges. It was all about the admin complexity and time and cost of NetSuite. We also have an organization which has a very flat organizational structure. It's one of our kind of values that we want to empower people who lead teams to make decisions. So we end up with about 30 plus different approvers across the business, which in a business of 300 sounds like a lot, but I think it speaks to our like democratized nature of the business.
Yeah.
Um, so that means 30 extra approvers that need full licenses in NetSuite, and that costs quite a lot, as I'm sure the attendees would appreciate. So, like the cost of that was another challenge on our side.
Yeah, and you kind of alluded to there the skill sets and things that are required, and I think what you should kind of share kind of two really good visuals on the next slide,
Yeah,
in terms of the two comparatives that are in the. Just talk us through this a little bit, and so from your
super. So on the left-hand side is NetSuite, right? And that's how you build your workflows. It looks simple, but each one of these little buttons and shapes, if you click on it, and if you click on it in a different spot, if you click on a line in a different spot, you get presented with these hugely complex forms that you have to fill in all the detail on. This is just to send an email, right? So to send an email, you have to fill in all these fields, and most of them you won't even know what they are, right? So send to client record, what does that mean? This is my NetSuite system. I'm not even sure. Um, so that's the complexity that's there. On the right-hand side is ApprovalMax. I haven't showed you my flows that are configured right now just because they got people's names in. I want to be sensitive of that. But if you just go create a brand new workflow, it'll look something like this. You've got your steps from left to right. You can add steps with the plus button. You can add approvers. And the most complex thing you can do is click this little matrix, and that then opens a matrix view of approvers where you can have different approvers based on different conditions. So this is trying to just graphically illustrate the different approaches to this. The NetSuite flows are complex, but they're also super powerful. So you can do anything you need to in them. The ApprovalMax ones, I think, have the advantage that that's just about approvals for specific objects. So they've been focused, and they're a lot easier to work with as a result.
Yeah, I think the graphic illustration there, I think is fantastic. 'Cause I think, like you alluded to, the most complex thing that you are probably going to encounter with Approval Max is the approver matrix, and that's probably a bit of a misnomer in the sense that it's only complex in terms of knowing what fields you need to apply to which people, and it's not a case of having to have a massive in-depth technical expertise. I think you kind of when we chatted previously, you mentioned about how the one on the left here, or my left, should I say, the NetSuite solution, you're going to have probably some technical expertise to be able to put that together. Whereas you can actually leave the approval workflow in ApprovalMax with your finance team, the people that know the parameters that they need to put in place, and they can build that without having to look at that additional technical expertise as well, which is great.
Hmm. Absolutely. So yeah, on our side, typically these workflows are either changed by myself or they're changed by like our financial controller. Um, but she's able to do everything she needs to on these workflows, right? She's not going to touch the NetSuite workflows. She doesn't even um, have insight in terms of how these things are configured. So in terms of empowering people in the business, it's been fantastic for us.
Excellent news. And I suppose looking a bit further onto this, and as we come on to the next question as well, this gives us a broad concept of kind of where you've been able to solve the different challenges you've faced. But I know the next question we come on to is, can you give us a bit of an example of where there's been a specific use case of how Approval Max and the wider solution has actually made a significant impact for you guys or solved a very particular challenge in terms of improving workflows or generally just improving productivity for the teams?
Sure. So as I've said a couple of times, NetSuite takes some learning to figure out what to do and where to do it. It's not particularly logical at times. We actually want people to do stuff quickly. We run quite a lean um, staff structure. And for example, the finance team has a huge amount of responsibilities to get through on a day-to-day basis. So we don't really have time to toggle between different tools. And to approve something in the past was a pain. You would get an email from NetSuite, and Yoco's runs through and through with Slack. If it's not on Slack, it doesn't really exist. So sometimes those emails don't get checked. So you would get an email. If you saw the email, you click on the link, you'd have to go to NetSuite, log in there, review the information there, review the bill, make sure it linked up, approve it, and then the next person in the line would get an email, and the process would repeat. And you've got the opportunity for things to slip through the gaps at each one of those transition points. So, what has been great for us is the Slack integration. So when you um, have Approval Max, you can install the Approval Max Slack bot, and you can see it there. And once you've put the Slack bot there, when there's an approval for you, you will see that it appears here and you get a notification right in Slack. You can see this is my Slack on the left-hand side. There's a bunch of stuff happening here. It's a busy, frenetic place. So it helps to have these notifications in the place where you spend most of your day. When you click that request, it pops up here and it doesn't just show you you have a new request, here's a URL, go to ApprovalMax or go to NetSuite. It actually gives you all the detail you need in the screen. If you was to scroll down here, you'd see that it even talks about the different line items that are coming in on this vendor bill. And here you have the opportunity to approve or reject it. Scrolling back up, it's also got this open an ApprovalMax button. So I just wanted to dip in and show you the ApprovalMax interface. So this is what ApprovalMax looks like. It's got the key things you need. So this is the vendor bill. The key actions are to reject it or approve it. Scrolling down here, you'll see that you can view visually the workflow and where this thing is. You don't really have this anywhere in NetSuite where it shows you that like the CEO doesn't need to approve because this is below a certain value. But ApprovalMax, we've got these rules set up in ApprovalMax and it takes care of that. It shows you that this thing is sitting with cost center approval, so it's sitting with myself. If I wanted to, I could change the approver to someone else, which is quite a handy function. And it shows you it's not going to go for any follow-on financial controller approvers or CEO approvers or CFO approvers because the value doesn't necessitate that. And then it's also got a link there to view the PDF. NetSuite has the PDF in it, and you can view it there, but every time you open the PDF in NetSuite, it opens as a new tab, and you end up with a lot of PDFs in your download folder, and you end up with a lot of tabs for all the different invoices that you're looking at. The way this works is a bit different. It opens here on the left-hand side of the screen, and you can zoom in, you can view the actual details of it, you can check that the totals um, link up, but it doesn't open as a new tab. So at the end of the day, it's not like you have 25 or 50 tabs open and you've lost yourself in a sea of tabs. So that's another nice little touch. Going back to Slack now, you could do everything I've shown you just in Slack, which is great. You could get to the PDF as well if you want, or the link to ApprovalMax. And here you've obviously got the approve and the reject button. So clicking approve, it would take a couple of seconds, and then you get a unicorn, right? I think that's great. So then you know it's approved, and then you can move on to the next one. So instead of getting an email, going into NetSuite, reviewing stuff, closing tabs, clicking approve, waiting for the next person, you can go through your messages in the ApprovalMax bot when you're notified, and you can quickly review it with information you need to make a decision, approve it, move on. So it like is a big productivity enhancement, especially for a team like our finance team, which is quite constrained in terms of capacity.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Fantastic, and I know kind of to condense that down a little bit here, the big benefit I suppose for you is that accountability with the different cost centers as you kind of alluded to on this slide here. The fact that vendor bills can now be managed by the cost center owner, and with the array of those across the business, having that ability to
Mm.
provide them with the accountability and the visibility of what is being paid for and kind of at where it's going is a massive bonus as well.
Yes, also giving them some accountability for what we're spending, right? If the person in the know isn't consulted during the approval process, then finance is going to be approving stuff based on what they think is correct. But by distributing out these approvals to the different cost center owners, all these 30 people across the business, we're making use of that organizational context that's actually spread out across the organization. So that helps us a lot.
Fantastic, brilliant, and I know on the if you can just jump to the next slide, we've got a really nice summary here for the people that have joined from an audience in terms of the before and after. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to kind of pull this out specifically is that it talks to a lot of the challenges that people have spoken to in terms of that additional NetSuite licenses for users. You're able to reduce that down by not having people accessing the additional NetSuite support and training for 20 users as well, which is another additional cost. And then that configuration and support, which is ongoing for NetSuite as well, which is something you're able to alleviate. And compare that before to that after, how much, I mean, aside from the financial benefits that have come from it, from a business perspective, do you feel it is night and day in terms of that integration has made a significant difference for you as an individual and also as a wider team in terms of you mentioned there capacity issues and resources and things like that?
Yeah, so I think it's made a big difference. I just don't need to train people on NetSuite and handle all the cynical comments about how we looks like something from 2006. So that's been positive. People can spend their days in Slack, which they're very comfortable and happy with, and get through things quickly, and then be freed up to focus on what really matters, right? Which is serving our merchants. Um, People don't really want to spend their days reviewing PDFs and checking that one figure equals another figure. So anything to help support that process and streamline that is very valuable to us. So yes, in terms of the costs, like people can do a quick calculation there. You can figure out what you're paying per NetSuite license and how many people you would need in NetSuite to approve. You can multiply those out and get your total. You can add that to the cost of any external or internal people time that you would need to build workflows if you haven't built workflows yet, and then the time to support them. Um, so conservatively, like we're spending like about 20% on ApprovalMax compared to what that would cost us taking the full NetSuite route. So yeah, there's a financial side to this as well. But in terms of ease of use, keeping users happy and keeping people productive, that's been a significant win as well.
Excellent news. And I'm going to put you on the spot because I know what the next slide is. In terms of the three features for you that you found kind of, I suppose, most valuable? And I know we've alluded to these as we go through, but if I had to ask you to succinctly kind of pull out the three that you found have been the most beneficial for you, what, again, here we go. Which three would you name and call out for us?
Cool. So like all of these have come out in the story that I've shared. The first one is the like easy, what you see is what you get kind of workflow set up. Um, I have a challenge now where I've had to limit finance access to be able to edit this workflow because they were going and making changes. And perhaps we weren't considering the impacts of all the changes they were making every time. So we've actually had to rein that in, but that's because it's super easy to set up. Um, ApprovalMax has a bunch of online documentation, which is very helpful. I read none of it. I just went and created the workflow and was basically up and running very, very quickly. So that's super easy. Slack integration for an organization like us that's lives and breathes in Slack, very important. And then just some of the attention to detail in the user interface where it's not opening a lot of spurious PDFs all over the show, makes it simply easier to get through things and saves people time, and it kind of operates in the background. I don't have any users complaining about Approval Max. They just get the email whether they've seeing it for or get the Slack notification whether they're seeing it for the first time or they've been using it for a while, but they just go through the link and can figure out what to do. So there's no Approval Max training for end users. They just kind of told that they'll get some approvals and they can look out for it. So it just kind of happens in the background, and we don't need to invest a lot of time and effort keeping users happy or educating or keeping
Yeah,
stuff up and running. Another benefit has been we don't need to test the workflow and check that it's actually going to work. In the NetSuite route, you might find there's some transition where you got the wrong kind of event type that's being handled, and you got some context that needs to be included or excluded, and you can't work out why it doesn't work. Approval Max has none of that; it just kind of works. So we don't need to spend a huge amount of time invested in regression testing of our workflows. We just set it up and let it go.
fantastic. And I suppose from someone in your perspective, the less you hear about a tool that is being used, the better that tool is probably performing.
Yes, absolutely. If people aren't complaining, then that's a good thing. We can focus on all the other issues.
Excellent news. So, I'm gonna obviously we've got the Q&A open. If there are any questions, I know Chris kindly asked one that Alex has already responded to around instead of Slack, can these integrations and steps be integrated with MS Teams? And that integration is currently in consideration for those that haven't seen the Q&A or also kind of considering the same question. Um, we are working to kind of add that, although there is no ETA at the moment. So hopefully that will be coming in the future. But at the moment, the integration that is available is Slack. So there isn't an integration with MS Teams at this moment in time. But again, we're moving forward. So watch this space. And if and when those new product developments come, we held one yesterday. It's worth keeping an eye on the product update webinars as they run as well. If there are any other questions, by all means, fire them into the relevant section, and we can try and address those. We'll give it a couple of minutes to see if any more come in, and if not, we can wrap it up there and kind of go forward. And if you've got any questions that you want to ask via email, you can reach out to myself, or to the wider team as well. I think kindly one of the things that we've got available when we send the follow-up information is obviously you'll have my information and details there to be able to follow up with me directly. And if need be, I can put you in touch with Derek via myself to ask any questions specifically about his use case if he's happy to do so. So we've had one. Chris has kindly come in with a question, and I'll direct this one at you, Derek. So has Yoco set up any other approval workflows beyond AP and AR, i.e., things like payroll changes and things like that, using the kind of the standalone workflows that are available?
No, one thing, no, we haven't. We'd like to implement workflows for some custom objects, like we have a bank details custom object. I don't think that's currently supported, but it's something that I've asked to be added to the product backlog for Approval Max so that you can look at it. but I'd like to use it more at the moment. I've got a couple more use cases, but that's that's one of them. We use it for vendor bills, we use it for purchase orders, but that's all we're using. We also, another thing that I can talk about is we got a, bu a bunch of different, what does ApprovalMax call them? Workspaces, or for all the different organizational entities, right? Because we've got a couple of legal entities, and we've got a couple of those all set up, and they've each got their own approval needs. So they've each got their own approval flows. So it also works for a company if you need to have multiple workflows across different legal entities as well, which was unique. Well, something different about our use case.
Yeah. Chris, I hope that answers the question in terms of, unfortunately, obviously, the short answer is no. I mean, again, if it's something you want to pick up with me and Alex on, we can dig a little bit deeper in terms of how that could potentially be done after the webinar. I know we've spoken about it in the past as well, but we can look at that in more specifics if it's helpful. And so far, we haven't had any other questions, so I'll give it another 30 seconds or so, and if not, we can wrap it up there. Derek, thank you very much for sitting and talking through this. The session today, I found incredibly helpful talking to you in terms of actually understanding that one, a big thing for me to come out of this is actually the benefits that Slack has provided you as an organization in terms of that workflow from a time-saving perspective. It would be good to kind of explore that with any other people on the call that are using Slack to see if that could be something that's beneficial. So by all means, feel free to connect with me via LinkedIn or reach out, or if I follow, well, if and when I follow up after this event, by all means, we can pick up that conversation then. But I think that's it for today, everyone. I hope it's been valuable, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon.